Hello and welcome to Media Center Ukraine Odesa, and our next briefing is about how Irish society, charity organization and officials help Ukraine. And we have online our guest, it's Anatoliy Prymakov, co-founder and director of NGO Ukrainian Action in Ireland, and Tom McEnaney, founder of Effective Aid Ukraine charity organization. Hello, thank you for your time. Thank you that you can join us.
Pleasure to be here.
Let's start from the obvious question. Can you tell us more about your foundation, about your charity organization? Let's start from Anatoly, I think.
Thanks. Well, Ukrainian Action in Ireland is in a way, a classic grassroots-led organization. It's a Ukrainian-led, Ukrainian-founded organization in Ireland that has been founded by Ukrainians living in Ireland and some of the people that have sought temporary protection in Ireland from the war since the conflict started. Prior to the war, there was only about prior to the big invasion, rather, of 2022, there was only about 3,000 Ukrainians living on the island of Ireland, and there wouldn't have been a functioning charitable Ukrainian organization because there was kind of no need for that to exist. However, with the influx of people and with, I suppose, the ask from the society and with the ask from the recently arrived Ukrainians in Ireland, there was a need for a grassroots organization to be founded and to, first and foremost, represent the voices of the people that have, of the Ukrainian community that has been started to develop in Ireland, because, these people tend to be underrepresented at every level, and also to promote interests of Ukraine and to help Ukrainians in Ireland and to help Ukrainians in Ukraine.
Thank you. And please, Tom McEnaney.
Tom McEnaney.
Sorry, show your story.
It's fine. It's an Irish name. So Effective Aid Ukraine is an organisation that's actually been around for 25 years. We were previously working almost exclusively in Belarus, helping institutionalized children with special needs, child prisoners, and orphans. When the war broke out, we stopped working in Belarus. We took a decision not to work in Belarus anymore, obviously. And so we pivoted to helping Ukrainian refugees. We're the main organisation bringing Ukrainian refugees to accommodation in Ireland, or have been. And so far we've helped 1,200 Ukrainians, mainly women and children. But we also have programmes working, getting people out of Russian camps to accommodation in Ireland. Recently, as in the last few months, we pivoted to focusing on projects in Ukraine. So I was privileged to be in Lviv only a few months ago, and we're now focused on improving the living standards of children with special needs in institutions in Ukraine, particularly those who have been relocated because of the war.
Thank you. Do you know how many Ukrainian refugees are currently in Ireland, and how many of them have arrived since the full-scale invasion?
Anatoly?
I can answer that one. So there would have been, it's difficult to count the precise number. The Irish government runs statistical analysis on the number of temporary protection that has been granted to Ukrainians that have arrived, right? Which stands above 90,000 at the moment since February 2022. However, that's not a true number because that doesn't account for people that would have left the country since and would have moved on to a third country. Like, for example, some people use Ireland as sort of a waiting, launch pad to move on to the US or Canada. So the Irish government tracked a number of active social security numbers, and it is believed that even though there would have been around 95,000 temporary protection permissions granted to Ukrainians in Ireland, there is at the moment around 75 to 77,000 Ukrainian beneficiaries of temporary protection staying in Ireland.
And I understand, Anatoly, the number came out recently that it's rising by about 500 per week.
Yes, about 500 per week are arriving at the moment. However, like I said, some of those might not stay, some of those might return, and yeah, at the moment it is 75 to 77,000. Yeah.
The next question: how are they integrated in the local society?
I suppose I might take this one, and then Tom, you can contribute as well. The process of integration is a lengthy one. It doesn't happen overnight. There are challenges to integration. So I suppose it's hard to answer exactly how integrated people are right now. However, we did an extensive survey in January, February of this year, and we came out with the findings in March that talks about the progress of integration and how people are finding it in Ireland, kind of a year on since the invasion of 2022. It's a metric that is hard to quantify. Right. However, majority of people do have, a place in school for their children. Majority of people are learning English. Majority of people have Irish people that they consider friends or acquaintances that they talk to, and majority of people do feel like there is an effort being made to help them with integration here. However, I would say that it is early yet to talk about people being fully integrated or completely integrated, because there's a lot of questions that kind of precede people integrating. For example, do people intend to stay here fully forever? Then yes, they would need to integrate. Do people plan on coming back? Then no, they don't need to. They just need to wait the war out, kind of. And then if people don't yet know, it is also hard to commit to integration. So to sum it up, it is hard to put quantify the integration progress. However, people do feel that they are trying to, and there is an effort to help them. And it is complicated in terms of people committing to integration, given the uncertainty of the outcome of the war.
If I can come in, first of all, I'd agree with everything that Anatoliy is saying. It's a complex question. What we find in the Telegram groups that we set up for every group that we bring over, and we're still, we brought over a group last month. We'll be bringing over a group next month, and we keep in touch with them after they've arrived. And one of the things they say is that they're very much made welcome by Irish people. So I think that's a feature, and that helps with the integration. The other positive, I think strong positive, is that children are very quickly brought into the school system in Ireland. Even though the school system in Ireland is at capacity, pretty much at capacity, room has been made for all these extra children, and I think other children welcome them in. So I think the children are being integrated reasonably well. I think one of the big impediments is language. Obviously, this is nobody gets to prepare for a big neighbour deciding to declare war. So it's not as if anybody was able to study English before coming over, and that's an impediment to integration. It's also an impediment to getting a job, which is in turn an impediment to integration. So although Ireland, it's relatively easy to get a job in Ireland, we've got full employment, it's obviously much more difficult if you don't have the language. And of course there's a childcare issue, because most of the adult Ukrainians, almost the vast majority of adult Ukrainians in Ireland are female and mothers.
Thank you. The following question: we see a different reaction in every country to the refugee from Ukraine. So how do locals, Irish, react to Ukrainian refugees?
Anatoliy, can I take that as a local Irish?
Absolutely, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I mean, it just follows on the point I was making earlier on. I think Irish people have been extremely welcoming. One of the most effective mechanisms that's been put in place has been pledged accommodation, where Irish people, because Ireland is in the middle of its own housing crisis. So one of the key constraints in Ireland has been the availability of accommodation. Tens of thousands of Irish people have pledged their accommodation to bring Ukrainian families into their homes. Apart from that, generally speaking, you get, I think, a very robust welcome from Irish people. And I'll tell you why I use that word. Obviously, we have, like in every other country in the world, we've got an element of far-right, anti-refugee, not specifically anti-Ukrainian element. But in Ireland, it's quite small. It took it some time to become vocal. And when it did, there was a strong reaction against it. So I think Irish people were very, very welcoming at the beginning. But that welcome has remained somewhat robust, even in the face of objections. Would that be your experience as well, Anatoly?
I believe you're correct, Tom. While the welcome at the outset of this invasion of 2022 was absolutely outstanding. The support was outstanding, and it broke my heart really, as a naturalized Irish, to see so much support being offered to Ukrainians. And you are right that some objections have been raised, and they're not necessarily anti-Ukrainian, they're more so anti-immigrant in general, but they are a loud minority in the face of overwhelmingly robust support for Ukrainians in this country.
Thank you. And let's come back to our main theme. What assistance project you're currently implementing in your NGOs and foundations?
Anatoly?
I'll let you go first, Tom.
Okay, so we still have, our main focus has not been on refugees in Ireland. Our view is once a Ukrainian gets to Ireland, they're safe, they're protected, they're not going to go hungry, they're not going to go cold. Our focus is very much on the most vulnerable Ukrainians in frontline cities, usually women with children who are at risk. And so, and that remains our focus. So we're still trying to get the most vulnerable people out of Ukraine and into Ireland. And according to our charity partners, I think we're one of the very, very few international organisations that's still managing to do that. And up until very recently, we were able to bring people to accommodation. More recently, that accommodation simply hasn't been available. So anybody coming in now into Ireland is going into emergency accommodation. That's been the situation for a while. And even the quality of that emergency accommodation has fallen. So what we have in Ireland is when the student accommodation was taken up again with the new student term, a lot of accommodation became unavailable. And yet at the same time, hotel accommodation was still being used for tourists. And so there was this interregnum where people are being put up in tents. The emergency accommodation in Ireland is of a very poor standard right now. Hopefully that will abate, that will become a little bit easier in October. But as I say, we do provide a level of support to help the people we bring over integrate, but that's not our main focus. And in terms of what we do in Ireland, that's it. As I say, we're pivoting to try and do projects now in Ukraine. But Anatoly is much, and Ukrainian Action is much more active at helping Ukrainians in Ireland than we are.
I would say certainly that's the case, Tom. That has been the focus of our organization for a number of reasons, in terms of how we are able to operate and how the things that we're able to do. So one of our main areas of focus for our organization at this point in time is, helping the people integrate, making sure that the voice of Ukrainians is heard, because we are the most active, we're the premier, Ukrainian-led organization on the island of Ireland, and we are very much focused on creating a community kind of grassroots community formation and grassroots-led organization, because our goal is to create a functioning, robust community of Ukrainians in Ireland who have a voice, who are able to be heard, and who are able to integrate and have a very, contribute to society and have a healthy community in Ireland.
Thank you. One of journalists who watched this briefing online, he have a question. Recently, our foundations they start since the beginning of the war. Everyone started buying cars, SUVs in Europe, and we go from east to west, starting from Poland. And right now, currently, many foundations start to buy stuff in Ireland. I think it's a question for Anatoly. Can you like see it, and have you helped them?
So I am aware of people buying, vehicles, SUVs and vans in Ireland and sending them over to Ukraine. And we have taken part in some of those fundraisers, not as an organization, but privately. And we have supported other people doing it, some of the trusted partners. It is a little bit tricky given the geographical distances involved. Ireland is as far from Ukraine as it can be. So it kind of, sometimes there are questions for people to, whether it makes sense to be bringing cars from so far away, given the, transportation costs and so on, and the fact that, a car from Ireland, the steering wheel will be on the opposite side of the road than what is needed for Ukraine. But, so to answer your question, and the market for used cars in Ireland has been pretty tight in recent years as well. So to answer your question, we know of organizations and people doing that. We know of people having sent multiple cars and truckloads of cars. But while we haven't been involved directly, we have helped people. But now and again, the question arises of how much sense does it make financially and logistically to bring car from as far as Ireland to Ukraine.
Can I come in on that as well? Because
sure.
We're in the middle of buying a bus, or I'm in the middle of buying a bus for an institution in Ukraine. And one of my fellow directors is actually the chief executive of a bus company. So we thought, oh yeah, great, we'll have a particular expertise. This is something we can easily do in Ireland. And we found it was much too expensive. Some Irish second-hand vehicles are more expensive than the equivalent new vehicles. That's how hot the second-hand market is in Ireland, and it's way too expensive to buy a bus in Ireland. So we're now looking at buying that second-hand bus in Poland, which will be much cheaper. It'll be much easier to get from Poland to Ukraine, obviously, and of course the steering wheel will be on the correct side of the bus.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. It was a briefing of how Irish Society charity organization and officials help Ukraine. And we have Anatoliy Prymakov, the co-founder and director of NGO Ukraine Action in Ireland, and Tom McEnaney, sorry, the founder of Effective Aid Ukraine charity organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Like, subscribe, and see you soon. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Anatoly. Hope to see you again.